Hey everybody, welcome back to Colony Drop, your favorite Gundam podcast. My name is Isaac.
And my name is Brian, and this is a podcast where we talk about anything and everything related to the Mobile Suit Gundam franchise. From the anime, to the movies, to the models, to the music, to the clothes, to the food. You name it, Isaac, we do it all.
That's right, Brian. And today we're talking about something very special, something amazing, something that certain Gundam fans might not even know about. Isn't that right, Brian?
Yeah, there was a movie that came out in the last year, I guess. Back when we watched the original Mobile Suit Gundam, we mentioned that there was a lost episode, episode 15, called Doan's Island. And the original character designer from Mobile Suit Gundam, Yoshikazu Yasuhiko, he was also the writer and illustrator of the Origin manga.
Ah, nice. Wow.
He redid episode 15 as a movie. I'll say loosely adapted. It's not exactly the same, but its general plot is there.
Yeah, sure.
And we got a whole movie out of it, Isaac, of the original Gundam in nice new animation. It looks basically exactly like Gundam the Origin, slightly updated, I guess.
Yeah.
It was a pleasant surprise, Isaac.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I speak for the both of us, Brian, when it really wet our whistle and made us want a whole remake of the original series in this style, because it was beautifully animated. It was a great story. It was a great experience. Who knew they could stretch out a single episode for about 2 hours, maybe a little over 2 hours. Oh no, I think it was about an hour 48, something like that. But yeah, wow, what a great ride this was.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. So that's what we're going to do today, listeners. We're going to review, discuss Mobile Suit Gundam, Cucuruz Doan's Island, the film.
Yeah.
Let me give you some particulars, Isaac. So this is, again, it's a film. It was released on June 3rd, 2022, theatrically in Japan, and then followed somewhat quickly thereafter, September 27th and 28th in 2022 in the U.S., and then it hit streaming in April of 2023 for the U.S. Now, Isaac, the only regret I have here is that we were not able to see this in the theaters, because when I say it was released on September 27th in the U.S., it was literally just September 27th and 28th. They didn't show it any other day. And if you couldn't get off work, to make the whatever it was, like the 5 o'clock showing, you were kind of out of luck. So I personally couldn't do that. I don't think you were able to either. And that's a big regret. I doubt they're ever gonna show it again. So kind of a bummer.
No, unfortunately not. But the great thing about the internet is you can kind of look for anything, and you can find it.
And
then you can watch it.
Yes. Speaking of availability, this is currently available on Crunchyroll, and as of the day we are recording it, is also available on Gundam Info, which is the official Gundam YouTube channel. However, I believe on Gundam Info that when they put it up, usually just like all the other series they put up, they do not put up the English dub. They only have the subs, which that's fine. But if you want to watch the dub, like Isaac, you got to go to Crunchyroll, or you got to consult Isaac's sources in the Crossbone Vanguard.
You know what? The good thing about English dubs is, they're usually lying around the corners of the internet. You just got to go look under those shady, shadowy corners, and, you can find anything available already, ready for viewing anime-wise. And, why pay a membership? Why subscribe? Just, the right Google search, and you can find the exact Gundam anime you're looking for. It dubbed.
What's that line from Sin City? It was great. It was like Marv when he was walking around. He's like, you look down the right back alley in Sin City and you can find anything.
I guess so. The other one I liked from him the more was modern cars nowadays all just look like electric shavers. And ever since I heard that, I can't stop agreeing with it.
Fantastic movie. Second one, not so great, but first one, phenomenal. Isaac, interestingly about this, they have not released this on Blu-ray in the United States yet. So really, the only way to watch the dub is Crunchyroll. If you wanted to, because normally you could go buy the Blu-ray and watch it there too, but they just haven't released one. They did in Japan, just not over here.
Is that because, why put in the capital for that? Because Blu-rays, I would argue, is a dying media by now. I mean, it's essentially, they might as well call it like collector's Ray at this point, because nobody mass market is buying this anymore. They're just going through their streaming platforms hoping something comes up that they like.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I think this one's in a little bit of a weird scenario. I don't really know the right situation, but I got the sense, because I think Crunchyroll controlled the theatrical release. Obviously, Crunchyroll, they obviously prefer their streaming platform, so maybe they just don't want to release it on Blu-ray. I think a lot of anime does pretty okay on Blu-ray, given that, like you said, it is sort of a collector's thing, because if they take your anime off the streaming platform, there's really no other way to watch it, right? So I think this is one of those things that maybe does a little better.
Maybe not no other way. but
Well, I mean, no other official way, no other non-Crossbone Vanguard.
of course. But Brian, you just said something pretty insightful right now. You just said that this is kind of in a weird spot, and that's true in multiple ways of looking at Doan's Island. If you think about it, for some people, this might not be canon from a certain point of view because it wasn't part of the original run they saw. Number two, in a way, this is almost a perfect side story, almost right up there with 8th MS Team, because it had an impact on the setting, but at the same time, it was so almost off to the side that it didn't affect a whole lot compared to what happened. It was almost like Amuro's, weekend getaway. And then he comes back to the ship and like everything goes on as normal.
Yeah, it was one of those vacations where, you don't feel very rested afterwards. Yeah. You actually feel more tired.
It's a vacation with nuclear weapons. So
it doesn't really follow the TV continuity or the film continuity. It follows more along the lines of the origin continuity, which is slightly different. Mm-hmm. I mean, Slegger was obviously in the movie, and he was there. He was on the crew much earlier than he was in Slegger. In the original series, and he might have had the best line of the film. I mean, obviously, the director Yasuhiko-san or Yoshikazu Yasuhiko, he did the origin, so this falls more in line with his vision, I would imagine. Yeah, I mean, I haven't read the origin, or at least I haven't read it in a long time, so I couldn't tell you if it follows exactly, but it does seem like it follows more in the origin style. I mean, obviously all the designs are the origin designs and whatnot. So
true.
But yeah, that's your canon answer. And to your point, it adds some, I'll call it flavored lore, right?
Right. You know what it does? It takes the canon and lore we had before, and it adds seasoning to it. There you go.
Yeah.
It just sprinkles some delicious, beautiful 2022 animated style seasoning to this incredible 1 hour and 48-minute run.
That's right. All right, Isaac, I wrote down the log line here, so let's take a look, and then we'll jump into it.
Do it.
The Earth Federation forces, riding on the momentum of their successful defense of Jaburo, have launched a major counteroffensive operation to capture Odessa, the headquarters of Zeon's Earth invasion force. The White Base, with Amuro aboard, is headed to Belfast for final resupply before the operation. On the way, the White Base is assigned a special mission to mop up enemy remnants on an uninhabited island, known as the Island of No Return. Amuro and his comrades set out to search for remnant operatives, but all they find are children who shouldn't be there and a single Zaku. After losing the Gundam in battle, Amuro encounters a man who calls himself Cucuruz Doan. Will Amuro be able to uncover the island's secrets, find his lost Gundam, and escape in one piece?
Wow.
Dun, dun, dun.
Well, first things off the bat, listeners, you're going to have to drop a comment. I want to know if you call it Jaburo or Jaburo, or if you happen to be from maybe a Spanish-speaking country, if it's called, I don't know, Jaburo or something.
This is the third time I think we've had this debate on this podcast.
This is a multiple choice question. Technically, there isn't a wrong choice, but my God, I want to see what the majority of fans go with. I'm going to go Jaburo. Anyways.
Well, you're a 083 adherent through and through,
exactly,
right?
So Jaburo, because I would imagine in military lingo that's what they ended up be calling it. But okay, yes, that's exactly the perfect setup for the series. We're not going to be running around the Earth sphere, going back and forth between a huge amount of locations. It really only takes place in the surrounding area of this island. If you think about it, it was an isolated story that had a lot of themes to it, and I don't know what else to add, Brian, to kick us off.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a great film. I finished up watching it, and I thought, usually Isaac and I think we take notes probably throughout the things we watch, just for the podcast. And I actually wrote down at the end, I don't really have too much to complain about for this film. It was very, very different than what we just watched, Isaac, The Witch from Mercury, where that one I couldn't write fast enough when I was watching the damn show. I had to pause it all the time. But this one, I just let it flow, let it breathe. I thought it was a great film. The island here is an actual island. It's called Alegranza. It's in the Canary Islands, which are off the coast of Africa, but actually a province of Spain, which I thought was interesting. Maybe you can give us some history on that one. Clearly, I don't think Spain got
Sadly, I have minimal knowledge of the Spanish islands history.
of the Spanish provinces in the Canary Islands.
You know what? Okay, Sunset needs to... We need to go there and build a monument to Cucuruz Doan and the glorious battle that happened there that saved the world from nuclear catastrophe. But you know what? We'll cross that bridge later.
Isaac, so you watched the dub, right?
I sure did.
All right. I also watched the dub just because I was like, sure, let's watch the dub.
There you go.
I actually enjoyed the English voice actors. I thought they did a good job. I still do miss the old dub cast, but far and away, Isaac, my favorite part of the dub cast is still the voice actor for General Revel. He was back. Didn't have a big role, but Jason Simon, you have a wonderful voice. We need, if they ever do remake the show, Isaac, we need a lot more General Revel just so that guy can do the voice.
Yeah, we'll add him to our list of potential people to contact for an interview.
There you go. I would want him to do the whole thing in the General Revel voice, though.
He'll always be in our hearts as General Revel.
So just in terms of things that we thought about the movie, Isaac, I made a list. Did you make a list?
Yes, I did. It's in my mind.
All right. What's the first thing that comes to mind?
The first thing is, it was actually Gopp. Who to my knowledge, I'm surprised, actually left Jaburo and was on the bridge of a ship, right? That doesn't seem very Gopp to me. But I picked up so much from this viewing about Gopp. Number one, we learned that he's a fleet admiral. I don't think that was mentioned anywhere else. Maybe it was. Number two, this might be, at least canonically, this is the second time he's met/talked to M'Quve. If you remember in Origin, he and M'Quve were also communicating at Antarctica about the treaty before Rebel did his speech.
He must be the Federation guy who specializes in nuke negotiations.
Yeah, or just in general, like, I don't know. No pun intended in general. But General Rebel, I assume, is probably more like the brawler type officer, and, Gopp will be the one they actually need for something administrative. But that doesn't really make sense here because Gopp was part of the fleet.
Yeah, he had his own aircraft carrier, Isaac. To my knowledge, that was the first time we had seen that aircraft carrier. That thing was massive.
Yeah, and it was great seeing Gopp in control of the situation. He wasn't intimidated by M'Quve at all. He and M'Quve kind of always seemed to, whenever they interact, they're always kind of half grinning at each other. You notice that?
Yeah.
Even in Origin, like, I don't know if that means they both understand each other the most, or if they both really don't take each other seriously.
Could be that.
Yeah, I guess Gopp really doesn't take M'Quve seriously because he didn't care at all that those nukes were going to launch. Like, every other officer on Gopp's bridge, and also a little asterisk that I noted, there was a woman for once, at least two women. One or two women on Gopp's bridge. We almost never see high-ranking Federation women, right? It's like Matilda.
That's true.
That's kind of it.
And they killed her.
Yeah, there you go. Matilda wasn't even high-ranking. She was pretty mid, I think. Maybe even low. But anyways.
Right, relative to the ones that we've seen, she was, I would call her high.
But this other woman was clearly on Gopp's bridge, so we know she's high up there. Even when the missiles get launched, Gopp seems to kind of keep his cool, right? Like, I assume Gopp's approach was, look, we'll try to stop the missiles. If we don't stop them, we still have to defeat Zeon. So it's almost inconsequential whether the nukes go off or not. We still have to fight.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it also, if the nukes go off, it just makes Zeon look worse.
Yeah.
Right? If they do hit, because then it's like yet another atrocity that they've committed, and this time it would break the treaty. Maybe you could argue that Gopp, his reaction was a bad one, given that it could have killed millions of people. But I don't know what his stance on that is. So it also didn't help M'Quve's case for Gopp taking him seriously, given the fact that the missiles don't actually end up hitting their target. Yeah,
that and also the fact that the missiles were in play probably just confirmed to Gopp how weak Zeon's position was at that point. That
sure,
they're this desperate that they're going to not only break the treaty and use weapons of mass destruction, but there must be almost nothing really serious left to hold us back if we do go through this attack.
Right, because if you think about it, if you're Gopp, you're like, oh man, they actually did launch the missiles, and then you find out that they just blew up. In your mind, you're like, well, these guys can't figure anything out.
Yeah, it's like. That's a good point, right? It's like, well, you got your little doomsday, fail-safe launched, but then it blows up in the atmosphere, so you have no idea what you're doing. You can't even pull off a threat.
Gopp could have done nothing, and the same thing would have happened, most likely.
Yeah, exactly. Well, all right. So what was the first thing you noticed?
The first thing I noticed was, because it was one of the first scenes, and then it was a theme that continued throughout the film, was that the Federation suits had a bad showing outside of the Gundam here. The Southern Cross team just torched the gyms in Casablanca. Yeah. And then when they fight the White Base crew later on, the White Base crew did not have a good showing either. Sliger got his head shot off. One of the gun cannons, I think, got destroyed. And I think, Kai got his whole bottom torso just cut off.
Uh-huh.
I don't even think they took out one Southern Cross member, right? Doan and Amuro took out the entire team.
Yeah, pretty much. That's a great point. I didn't really think of it like that. I mean, in the Gym Pilot's defense, they have much less experience than the white base crew.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'll give them a little bit of that. And clearly, against the gyms that the Southern Cross were fighting, clearly a high mobility Zaku makes all the difference in like upgrading the Zaku's abilities, because they really went through the rest of the gyms in that city. So high mobility Zaku, this was such a great showing for them. And I almost thought they were DOMs till we saw the whole image of the Zaku, you know?
Yeah, they have these like slightly larger leg vents. And I guess that's where they put the little mobility engines. But yeah, they're the MSO6 Zaku 2 high mobility type ground uses. These have to be like one of your favorite Zakus now, right, Isaac? Even given the color scheme, I mean...
Absolutely, yeah. I was so glad to see them. And, you know, high mobility Zaku's been around for a while, but they're really kind of below my radar. So now they're on my radar.
But you got to paint them brown, give them a desert color scheme, and have them skirt around, and then you pay attention. Then Isaac's like, ooh. Yep.
I even like the Southern Cross symbol. I'd get that on for the squad, yeah. So something else special, Brian. Add Southern Cross to the list of equal opportunity mobile suit squads, because they had a woman pilot. That is so rare in Gundam.
That is true. And that was one of the questions I had for you. I didn't have many criticisms of this film. One of them would have been the white base crew performance could have been better. I think maybe I would have liked to see Slegger kill one of the Southern Cross, because he was billed as like a good pilot, right? That came onto the crew.
Yeah,
it would have been nice to see him do one of them, even if you still get his gym destroyed. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
The other one was, if I had to add anything to the movie, Isaac, it would be maybe a little bit more background on the Southern Cross team.
Okay.
There were so many of them that I didn't even really know all their names by the end of the
right.
film.
Yeah, we had Big Guy Leader, who's Dolzel's doppelganger, kind of. We had a more mellow-headed kind of silver-haired guy. We had Wacky Salamander Face. Yep. And then we had a Silent Woman.
Right.
That's about it.
But besides the Big Guy Leader and crazy Salamander Face, who with his heat hawk throwing, which is interesting, I expected more out of the woman. I think her name was Selma. I got the sense that she did not really want to be fighting Doan.
Oh.
And it felt like they had more history. I was kind of expecting them to turn out to be like maybe they were an ex-couple or something. I kind of expected him to spare her, or at least that we would get more of Doan's backstory out of her. But then it cut to that part and he had already sliced her in half. And she was like, "Why, Doan?" And I was like, well, I guess we're done there. Like, that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. It clearly was inferred they had history, either as friends or I don't know. They were exes, whatever. But at the happening point, I was expecting like a quick flashback to like, you know, back at Site 3, they're on a date or something, or something like that. But no, we didn't get that at all. You're supposed to infer Doan's previous life before he essentially became a traitor. And then, that's it. Clearly him and the leader of Southern Cross have bad blood, who I guess he has bad blood with everybody though, right? Because he's got a problem with Char also. Although he's right about Char being a traitor. So, yeah, a lot of stuff in the background.
Yeah, that leader, I think Egba was his name.
Okay.
I feel like he just doesn't really get along with anyone.
No, but man, I see why they keep him a squad leader, because he's very good at killing other people.
He was very good. He annihilated that gym team. Although my favorite part of that gym assault in Casablanca was the anti-ship rifle that the one gym like ate to the face when they blew his head off.
Oh, wow.
That was great.
Yeah. You know what, Brian? I might be getting ahead of ourselves. Like, we didn't actually do a run through of the movie, but what was the sequence of Zeonic goals? By that I mean, it looks like Makuve had Doan on the island to operate and protect the island where the nukes were.
That's right. That was what I took from it.
Okay, then they lost contact with Doan, or they weren't entirely sure what was going on and they needed the nukes ready, so he sent the Southern Cross squad to the island, who were able to reestablish the remote connections to allow them to allow Makuve to launch the missiles from his command center.
Yeah, but basically what happened, or the way I understood it, was they had sent Doan to the island to maintain it. And I could be wrong about that, but I think that's what it was. And then while he's there, he decides, like, hey, I really don't want a nuke. And so he sabotages the nukes while he's there. That's what he was doing at night, was trying to figure out how to make them blow up when they launch. And so Makuve tries to communicate, can't get anyone. So he's like, hey, I need my nukes back. He sends the Southern Cross team in. they get there, they launch the nukes, but Doan has already sabotaged them, so they blow up in the air.
Okay, I have so many questions, and these are all very critical questions of Makuve's decision-making abilities. Number one, why would you have one Zaku protecting so many vital nukes for something so critical? Number two, why would you send just the Southern Cross team to secure the island if something had clearly gone wrong with the nukes? Number three, but before Doan, anything happened with Doan and the Southern Cross team even, the Federation fleet pulls up at Las Palmas, which is clearly a stone's throw away from his island. So Makuve really let this drop the ball 3 times in a row with this situation. He should have thrown everything he had to grab those nukes, right?
I mean, he definitely didn't know that Doan had double-crossed him, right?
Yeah.
The Southern Cross may have been the best option he had at the time. I mean, I would imagine that the other forces were amassing in Odessa, and he doesn't want to pull them away. There was also, I think he was mentioning the assault on Gibraltar. He could have had people tied up over there.
Okay. But he even dropped the ball with Doan himself. Do you think Doan, before he met the children and got a change of heart, was Doan the man for the job? Was that why he was selected? Or was it this more a case of, well, send anybody to guard the island, and Doan just happened to be the person?
That part I wasn't clear on. I think if I think about the movie, I think that was the only plot point I wasn't clear on, about whether they actually selected him to go to the island or whether he really did betray and then he just went to the island and took out the person who was supposed to be guarding the island.
Another kind of real world crossing into Gundam flaw thing is the nukes themselves. When intercontinental and ballistic missiles are launched, there's usually dud warheads within the warhead as they scatter and launch towards their destination target. I hope we never find out in real life. But the whole point of that is, there will be attempts to shoot it down. So hopefully they hit the duds and not the actual missile. And Makuve clearly didn't design, or whoever designed these nukes clearly didn't believe in that, because there was just one warhead per city and they were the real ones. So yeah, it was, I don't know if they were limited by size or whatever, but they said, well, there's no room for duds. We really just have or decoys. We just have the nuke per target. And boy, did that bite them.
Well, I mean, to his credit, at least he had more than one nuke, right?
Yeah.
At least there was 5 or 6, I think. So that was good on his part. But yeah, I guess he didn't have the duds. I mean, that said, I think Doan would have just found all the duds anyway and, sabotaged those as well.
Probably.
So I'm not sure that it would have mattered. But this whole thing about Makuve actually brings up what I thought was one of the best parts of the movie. Was that in general on the movie, I thought all the characters acted like themselves and pretty much everything was on point. Especially Makuve, because it even went a little bit further for him. And maybe this is why he didn't care so much, because he kind of really didn't care at the end, Isaac. Remember, after the nukes blew up, he laughed because he said something to the effect of, well, I think the perpetrator doesn't want to nuke civilization like I don't. But Makuve's heart isn't in it for nuking things, right? Because he collects art, right? He wants to preserve the finer things in life. He doesn't want to get rid of them. So it's always ironic that he's the one launching the nukes.
That's true. And kind of going a little farther from your talking point, do you think these orders came from Kycilia or Giran?
Oh, that's a good point. We didn't see any of the zombies in this film.
I say this is Giran. Technically, he's under Kycilia, but this feels very Giran.
It could just be something where he's blanket authorized to do so.
Okay.
No, maybe not even authorized, but maybe if this happens, then do this.
I see. Okay, so it's probably a general zombie order that came down, and it doesn't really matter who exactly came from. It's just from leadership and get it done.
Yeah, because for all we know, Giran could have told him, hey, whatever you do, they better not take Odessa.
Right, yeah.
Do anything you can to keep those forces on Earth.
They lampshaded. We got some clear Third Reich German references here, because him and Gopp were talking about the Germans having the order to burn down Paris before they lose it. And, the German general in charge didn't carry that out because he thought Paris was so beautiful and didn't want to do that. And Makuve kind of laughs at the end because of the same situation happening. One of his men didn't follow the order, and the whole burn down plan didn't go through.
I think that's a perfect characterization of Makuve, and it sets Makuve apart from being just a generic bad guy that launches the nuke, right? Like, if you compare Makuve to the guy we just watched fire the laser in G-Witch, Makuve has more layers to him, whereas the other guy was just like, I want to push the laser, let me push the big laser button.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah. Okay. Well, does this put a few points in Makuve's bucket for you, Brian? He's not a terrible guy.
I mean, he's still a Zeon.
Yeah.
But I think it makes him a better character, for sure.
Yeah.
And Makuve, just in general, he's a pretty well-rounded character because he's, like, high up. He's in charge of all these nukes, seemingly. He's also a pilot, Isaac, who did really well in Mobile Suit Gundam, although he was fighting Amuro. If you compare Makuve to a lot of people that we see, he'd probably do pretty well. Yeah. He's a pretty well-rounded character. He does a lot of things.
Yeah, it was great seeing him again.
It's a snappy dresser, too, with his little scarf thing, little floof.
One of the few... Actually, he's the only officer I've seen that ever dresses like that, so...
Well, he's got flair.
Yeah. I've seen one guy dressed similarly. I think it was in Origin. It was like Dagon's little assistant. But
okay.
Yeah, I don't know what the actual rank means for that or all that. As far as I'm concerned, it's like the cream, the mother of pearl version of like Shima and Char's uniforms and Cadillac's uniform, where only a few people are in red. Only a few people have the neck handkerchief thing. So
Right. Speaking of uniforms, Isaac, you must have loved this one because there was a lot more detail on the Federation uniforms than we normally see.
Yeah, they look great. The officer uniforms look great. Even Bright's, I wasn't happy seeing Bright in blue because normally I prefer seeing him in khaki, but he looked great.
Yeah, that must be an Origin thing. They must place a lot of the Fed people in blue, I would imagine. But did you notice, like, I don't know what to call it, but the upper torso collar area of the Federation uniforms, the colors must have meant something. Like some people had blue and white, some people had blue and red. Did you notice that?
Yeah, a little bit. I feel like this is what's going to be great about a remake because it's going to flesh out the world even more with more detail that we can do, and you can begin, very clearly inferring subtle rank differences, subtle, deployment and regional differences.
Yeah, and Bright was much more official when he talked to the crew members in this film, right? He kept calling Kai and Amuro by their ranks, which is not something that he really did in the original series.
What was cool too was the contrast. Like Bright looked very young here, almost I'd argue younger than the original series, not by much, maybe like a year or so. Just the way he was presented and carried himself, he seemed more mature for someone that was clearly so young.
Yeah, and this also is still pretty early on, I would assume, in the journey. I mean, they haven't taken Odessa yet. They've been through some stuff, but they haven't been through Odessa, and they haven't made it back to space yet. So he's still got a lot of growing to do. And I mean, he handled it pretty adeptly by giving the crew an opportunity to get court-martialed, essentially, as Slager kept saying.
Yeah. Bright had some of my favorite scenes too, especially with that horrible officer that like gives him the orders to pretty much just relays the orders from headquarters to him.
Oh, yep.
I loved how when they said that they need the white base to join the attack on Odessa and stop what they're doing on the island, Bright was like, as you may recall, you told us nobody else can do this on the island. So how are you going to have someone replace us to do this operation if you need us at Odessa, So, right. Yeah. And then, of course, when he was just pure BSing that, they had so many engine problems and technical problems on the ship that they can't possibly leave Spain anytime soon.
Yeah, I love that he was using both phones at his disposal to do it, right? Yeah. He was like asking one question on the left phone and then picking up the right phone and being like, what do you mean? It's very well handled, Mr. Bright.
Interesting design choice on the bridge. Like, why would a captain need two phones next to him? Like, if you're any of our listeners in the Navy, like, chime in if that's actually how bridges work. Like, the captain's chair really has multiple phones for, I guess, emergency situations or something.
I mean, I guess you need at least two. I mean, this isn't Star Trek, right? Where you're like computer, I don't know.
It kind of is, Brian. Because they clearly have a main screen, and they can.
That's true.
Yeah, I hope that has picture within picture,
Something else that made me laugh. There was actually quite a lot of laughs for me in this film. So the Bright sandbagging everyone, which was funny. All the Bright slap flashbacks, those were hilarious. I got to see him hit Amuro a few times. I liked how they showed it right one after the other, and like doesn't Amuro say that was even harder than last time or something like that? But probably the funniest thing to me, Isaac, in this film, this killed me, and it was really early on. And it was so in character on both sides that I loved it. It was when Amuro and Kai were searching the island, and Kai was complaining over the radio that he was getting attacked by the kids, and Amuro just wasn't having it, and he just turned off the radio on Kai without even answering him.
Amuro, he's been through a lot. This is a very rough couple of days for Amuro.
And the other funny thing being, I now know how to milk a goat, Isaac, because Doan taught me with his detailed step-by-step goat milking instructions.
This movie was a tutorial in that regard then. But one of the funniest things I thought was the children they lock themselves in. What
Yes.
were they, in a pantry or something like that, or their
Yeah,
bathroom?
something like that. The hunger strike.
Yeah, and then of course the hunger strike's broken within minutes by by Slager wisely saying that they have honey ice cream, which sounds delicious, by the way.
We'll have to do a live stream where Isaac eats honey ice cream and watches Doan's Island.
Well, we'll do it when we go to Spain, because we clearly have to go there to the actual region, the island region, and
We will.
yeah.
We will watch it in the crater of Alegranza Island.
We'll tell them, like, we heard you guys were good at, like, honey ice cream, and by the way, we're here to commemorate a great hero.
So, Isaac, maybe a few points on the designs here. Did we know that the big tray was amphibious?
I haven't seen it go on water. I just kind of assumed by, like, the look of it, since it's just a glorified big hovercraft, that it was amphibious, because it's got, like, the kind of, air cushion skirt thing that all hovercraft have. But
it absolutely makes sense. I just, before Revel said that, that had not occurred to me.
no, I mean, we've never seen it on water. I'll give them.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah, I wouldn't blame people for looking at it and saying it's too big to put on water. But I guess, I'm surprised they made such a big point about saying, this is the route that it needs to go through to get to Odessa.
Yeah.
They made that such a critical plot point, but it was cool seeing the big tray, like, in its little, I guess, dry dock would be the term.
Yeah, that's a good dry dock.
Yeah.
Equivalent of a hangar. Yeah.
Right. And then they put, like, a naval capital ship next to it for scale, and so just so we could see how big it was.
Yeah,
so,
I think it was huge.
Yeah.
It was called the Moltke, I think, or maybe the Moltke. I don't know how to pronounce that. But then I started looking up big tray, like, ship names. Right? And my favorite one is called the Queen Turtle. And it fights during the Grips War in the manga Advance of Zeta.
Oh,
so
wow.
One day we'll read that, Isaac, and we can learn about the Queen Turtle and her exploits. That's the best name for a big tray.
Yeah. See, the Federation has pretty good ship names. It's always stuff that's kind of reasonable that we can kind of recognize. They don't go wacky like Xeon sometimes.
Well, speaking of wacky Xeon names, Isaac, the star of the Xeon show here was the Fat Uncle.
Yeah, at first I thought to myself, is that what the Federation calls gals? And then I saw it, and then I was like, that's not a gal.
Isaac, that one sounds like the Federation named it. That sounds like an enemy name for the ship.
Yeah, really. Yeah, the Fat Uncle.
I mean, it's a pretty perfect name. I'll give it to him.
Right, yeah. It was cool seeing it. I'm kind of curious why they used that instead of the gal.
We did see a gal once, I think, in the show, but maybe I was just mistaking that for the Fat Uncle. But yeah, the Fat Uncle's that's something. With that design and that name, classic right there.
Yeah, I can. Would you want to buy one?
I would buy a mini desk replica of the Fat Uncle to go with my little mini white base. Yeah,
I like that. There you go. Put some Southern Cross team members in there, little miniatures.
So Isaac, maybe my biggest takeaway from this film about why it's so good is made especially clear given the fact that we just watched Witch from Mercury. Okay, I think this film differs from Witch from Mercury in two really big ways that make it much better, more enjoyable. And I'm not even talking about endings. One, this film was very cinematic.
Or yes.
Where less is more. There were more good cinematic filmed, I'll call it, scenes in this show than I can even remember in Witch from Mercury. So here's some examples. So the very first time the Doan ambushed the Gundam from behind silently, that was terrifying. It was almost like a horror film scare. Do you remember that? When his arms came across?
Right.
Oh, man.
Like, kind of like you're saying, a horror movie, like the stereotypical, the killer jumps out of the bushes and, like, both hands have nothing in them. One grabs like your chest or your neck, and the other one just covers your mouth. It was essentially that, but with mobile suits.
Right, and it was silent. Amuro was looking around, and then boom, I was like, oh, like he's here.
How did Amuro not detect it? Like,
I don't know. Doan's a master of his island.
I guess so. The Minovsky particles were very thick.
Very, very thick. Another good example, Isaac, on a smaller scale, we spent the whole night with Amuro walking around trying to find his Gundam, and the only thing he finds at the end of the night is the crater. He's staring into this giant hole that I think one of the kids called a mortar crater, which is pretty morbid. I don't actually know if that crater is real on Alegranza, but I'll assume it is.
We'll find out when we go. We'll ask them, was there a giant battle here with mobile suits, and one of them used a mortar to blow this crater?
It reminded me of, if you watch Andor.
Oh.
when they were on the planet doing the undercover operation to steal the gold.
Right.
And how that planet was very sweeping and big. Like that's what Amuro walking into the crater reminded me of. It was much bigger in scope. Amuro felt really small. It made the situation seem very hopeless, but also very melancholic.
Yeah. Very introspective situation for Amuro to be in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Kind of backtracking a little bit to what you just said. So do you think that's the crater from when Doan was just chopping through those gyms, killing them left and right? And he told the kids later, like, oh, I just came back from just patrolling. There was clearly we're under mortar attack. That's what the explosions were. Nobody actually got killed. I'm fine. But there was just mortars being dropped on the island. We'll be okay.
Could be. I don't know. I don't know if it was from that instance or you're just supposed to assume that maybe there was an original battle on the island for Zeon to even seize it. Could have been from that. It also could just be a volcano. I don't really know what the situation is on Alagranza. I guess we could look it up. It is a real island. Maybe it does have a volcano on it.
Okay. I kind of have to go back to a strategy question. If the Federation was at Las Palmas with clearly a huge force, why didn't they just go to... Well, I kind of answered my own question. The movie answers the question for me. They did want to go to that island. And they
the white base was the answer. Like, hey, go get them.
The white base was kind of plan B, actually, because plan A got killed.
Yeah, the gyms didn't do so well.
Okay.
Lost a gun parry and everything.
Okay, so the Federation was working on the island. It just, things just spiraled in a different way than they thought. Okay.
Another good example, the very last fight, where it had two great examples. It was Amuro coming in, and at this point he had lost his shield against Doan earlier in the movie. And to fight the big boss, Egba, he lights up both sabers. That was a great scene. Loved that. And then even just the, what I'll call set piece at the end, Amuro fights Egba on the crater's edge. That was a perfect place to have a climactic fight.
Oh, yeah. And then they give Egba like kind of a Star Wars villain death, Disney villain death, where, of course, you're always next to like a bottomless pit or a cliff or a chasm. And there you go. Down you go. Although he was cut in half, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was also... This is not my second way that it differs, but because we're talking about it. That part where Amuro kills Egba was one of the best parts of the film for Amuro because it showed that Amuro wasn't just attacking randomly. He makes a comment like he's waiting for his opportunity. He's like, there. He says something like, there it is. He realizes when Egba let his guard down, and that's when he kills him. It builds some tension there. It shows Amuro has some strategy. He's not just firing off random attacks. Both of them were literally on the precipice of defeat. And so choosing the moment to strike shows his intuition as a pilot. I thought that was good.
When that happened, Brian, when he was cut in half, in your mind, were you screaming, "As God is my witness, he is broken in half"?
That's exactly what I was thinking. By God, he's dead.
Send in the MPs. All right.
Oh, JR. But my second reason why it differs from which, Isaac, is this film did had a lot of character interaction where they weren't even talking. The characters had a lot of room to breathe, and they didn't say everything they were thinking. And a lot of stuff was communicated with just looking at each other and pauses, particularly between Amuro and Doan. There was this undercurrent through the movie of like, hey, we both know we're both pilots and we're enemies, but you know what, kid? Go look for your Gundam, and I'm just not going to help you look for it, but you can go do it if you want. And Amuro was like, okay, I'm going to go find it, and when I get it, I'm going to probably blow up your Zaku and fly away. I felt like a lot was communicated in the movie without actually saying it, which I think is different than a lot of the stuff that you get, like Witch from Mercury, which is they had too little time to do what they wanted to, so everyone was always just explaining everything left and right, which you don't necessarily need to do to make a good piece of work.
Yeah, very true. And even not just even alone in silence without any dialogue or monologue, you could clearly see emotion and the thoughts on certain characters' faces just alone. And the scene that really strikes out to me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is when Amuro squashes that Zeon pilot that was defenseless and running, because Amuro clearly is not okay with what he did. And I would even argue, I know I'm Zeon and stuff, but I would argue that this was very un-Amuro of Amuro to do.
It was. I think you have to keep in mind that I think Amuro had to make the choice of to kill him to save the kids or to not kill that guy. Because if he lets him live, he might kill the kids, even accidentally, right? Because a falling piece of rubble could smash the house, and then they're all dead.
Part of me feels like that was uncharacteristically Amuro, and what the Amuro I know should have done would be essentially use the speaker on the Gundam and say stop or I will squash you.
Right.
Whether the guy would have still booked it and Amuro had to kill him, that would have been kind of more understandable. But if the guy kind of surrendered, that'd be much more Amuro, where he takes the guy into custody or something. I don't know how that would have played out, but it seemed more Amuro than the Amuro that we saw.
You could say it was a little more Suletta than Amuro, even though I think this came out before Witch from Mercury.
Right, yeah. And as far as comparison between the two, I'll just say this. This was much better done and much more enjoyable than The Witch from Mercury, despite The Witch from Mercury having far more time to put together a coherent, good story. This was such a much better, almost an encapsulated movie within itself, it could be. So,
right.
What was I going to say? Oh, Egba. So Egba calls people traitors twice. Doan, we clearly know is a traitor because he kind of ran off and went AWOL, right? MIA.
At least that's what his team thinks. Again,
Yeah.
I don't. If Mukube placed him there, it seems odd to place him there but not tell his team where he's going. I don't know. That was a little strange. So that's the only thing I'm unclear about. So
okay.
if listeners, if you understand, let me know. Let me double check that right now.
That's while you're checking on that. Egba throws around the traitor accusation a lot. So first he used it against Doan, and then Egba also said that Char's a traitor. But at this point in the story, Char's part of command. He can't be a traitor. He's doing everything he's told to do. He's actually very good at it. So is Egba just throwing around these insults?
I think Egba has some authority issues.
Okay.
And it seems to me that he's been burned by Doan's apparent desertion. Right? Because he would have been on the team when Doan was leading the Southern Cross.
Okay. So does he not have authority issues with Mukube then because Makube's power level, or just why would he not have authority? So he only has authority issues
maybe not
if you're in his squad or near his level.
Right. I think it's paranoia about battlefield people with authority.
I see. Okay.
Because Makube's he's not on the front lines like Char, like Doan.
Okay, that kind of makes more sense. Okay. All right, interesting. I guess whatever helps Egba get hyped up for battle, just call any enemy his traitor or a traitor. So
all right, I'm checking. Here's the facts. But that part, right? It wasn't super clear about how he got on the island in the film.
No, I'm very curious too how the final reports were going to Mukube, like, hey, I'm on this island, I'm taking care of these kids, and or did he not mention the kids at all, or was Mukube I don't care whatever you do, just keep those nukes running, and then once the communication stopped, Mukube was like, well, I have to send the Southern Cross team. There's a few.
Right.
I'm curious about how the exact sequence of events happened.
All right, I'm reading it here. I think some of this probably comes from some side stories. Oh man, guess where Doan's wife was? She was on Island Ifish, the colony dropped to Earth during Operation British.
So she was outside of Side 3?
Yeah, she was emigrating away from Side 3. He now understood that his wife and son had been killed by Zeon's attack.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my.
That explains a lot. Okay. Oh, boy. Boy, they really picked the wrong guy for the job.
Okay, he did desert because there was that one scene. Now it makes sense. There was that one scene in the film where he sees he flashes back to the Southern Cross fight, and he sees the one kid struggling.
Yeah, with a dead mother.
That was one of the kids. That was the kid's name's Lope. But I did read that afterwards, but I didn't realize when I was watching the movie.
Wait a minute. After his wife and son get gassed and dropped on Earth in the colony, and it takes seeing the corpse of a random person with a crying child to make him realize, you know what? Zeon's bad.
Oh no! It was because he didn't know. He didn't know that he deserted the next day after learning that and seeing the kid.
Oh, so that all happened in one day. He found out about what happened to his family, and he saw that the collateral damage in one day. Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. There's a good page on Doan on the wiki because a lot of this was not in the film, so this is actually pretty helpful to. Gives a lot of context here, but
sadly I'll never read it, Brian, because Doan is a traitor to Zeon.
So yeah, Doan killed the Zeon operative that was stationed on the island.
Oh, so Doan isn't the actual guard.
Correct. He killed the guy that was supposed to be there. It's just a coincidence that he found his way to Alagranza, an uninhabited island that secretly houses a Zeon nuclear silo. After killing the Zeon operative stationed on the island and dumping their Zaku into the ocean, he built a secret home for war orphans, and he rescued there, including the crying boy he saw, which was Lope.
Wow. Well, Brian, it sounds like Doan not only punches above his weight because he's a one-man machine that can fight a squad, but it also seems like he has a way of going to the right place at the right time. Does that mean that Doan is a new type, Brian?
Oh, I don't know about that.
I don't know. He's a pretty good pilot.
Maybe. He's drawn to sorrow for sure. It does give Mikuve a little bit more of a pass then, right? Because Mikuve had a guy on the ground.
Yeah.
He didn't know that Doan had killed him probably months ago.
Honestly, still that much more of a pass, though, because as far as I'm concerned, Mikuve dropped the ball by having one man guarding this very critical, series of missiles. When it should have been a small army.
Well, he was probably trying to be quiet, be secret.
Why not just put the missiles were on the submarine, right? Why not just move that sub to Odessa?
Well, wait, were they in the sub or were they weren't in the base?
Okay, well maybe they were transported by the sub, but there's clearly a sub there.
Oh, that's fair. Got to get them there. That's true.
Yeah. So if they can get on the sub and off the sub, then just put them back on and then move the sub to Odessa.
Just mobile weapons.
Yeah. You're going to want to keep the ace in your hands, So
I think it's because Mikuve's heart isn't in it, Isaac.
All right. Well, you know what? None of this would have happened if Admiral Isaac was in charge.
Admiral Isaac leads with the nukes and asks questions later.
Exactly. You know what? Nukes are pretty robust. So the moment I knew something was wrong on the island, I would have napalmed it, and then we moved the nukes. So sorry, kids, but there's a war to win. That's all you got to know.
Isaac's like 3/4 Xeon, but like a quarter Blue Cosmos.
Yeah, pretty much. And they're like, sprinkle some Titans policy on top of that too, as you guys will find out when we do our Zeta watch. But
that was pretty much everything on my list, Isaac. Do you have anything left?
I definitely left it wanting more and feeling sad that there wasn't more. I'd love the series to continue from here or even see before. But that's not really how this works. I'd almost want this treatment to be done for each episode of the series. That'd be awesome. Each episode gets an hour 45.
Oh, yeah. Or you could even break it up into like these 3 episodes relate. So let's do one movie for those 3 kind of things. It'd be fantastic. So
yeah, exactly.
Like, could you imagine like all the Ramba Ral episodes in one, all the Black TriStar in one? I mean, that'd be super cool.
Oh, it'd be awesome. Gundam, the miniseries. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of comments on that. I think it's pretty divided, actually. I think some people, they just can't fathom it being remade. They don't understand why you would do it. There's people like us who see this and we're like, this would be great. Not only do I fall on the side that thinks it would be great because the animation's so cool and it's fun to see in a more modern take, but also I think from a business point of view, I mean, they make Gundam to make money. You're not painting it because you like art. I mean, they like art, but you got to pay the bills. And so at some point, just to keep your franchise going, there will come a time when people no longer want to watch the original. I know that's considered blasphemy by some, but that's just what the kids are into these days, right? They just like flashy things. If you turn on Netflix or Crunchyroll, there's so many other things to watch. At some point, the 1979 series isn't going to draw in new fans. And so that's a reason that I'm going to say it will be remade one day. It might not be this year. It might not be 5 years from now. But 10 years from now, I think it'll probably be remade. And the other reason, which I don't really want to even mention because it's like not a cool thing to talk about, but there's probably some resistance to remaking it while Tomino-san and all the voice actors from the original are still alive.
That's a good point.
Like, that's a very serious thing in Japan. They may wait till they're all dead to remake it. That's not, I don't mean that to be like morbid or anything, but that's probably just the reality of the situation. It's going to be a lot easier to remake this thing when all those people are gone and they don't have to think about that or worry about it. Not that they should worry about it, but like, if you were to remake this today, a lot of people would say, well, why don't you let Tomino-san do it? Or why don't you let Yasuhiko-san do it? Well, Yasuhiko-san gave that interview a year or two ago where he said, look, if Tomino wanted to redo it, he could. No one could stop him. But he also said the Tomino of today is much different than the Tomino who made this show. So do you want him to remake it? Does he even want to remake it? They're all getting really old. Those guys deserve to do whatever they want with the time that they have left. I don't know if they want to take a big project like this on. But regardless, we're all expendable. Businesses don't care. One day, Bandai Namco, they're going to remake this just to make money. It doesn't really matter what I think, what you think. Money conquers all, Isaac.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't really think of it like that. Hearing you say that almost makes me believe that, well, pretty much does make me believe that we'll get a Star Wars remake.
Oh, someday.
Yeah, they're already talking about the Harry Potter remake's going to happen, and look how recent that was.
I know, right? Does anyone want that? That is ridiculous.
Clearly the executives and I assume the shareholders want that. So,
Ay. Well, hey, Isaac, you could a lot of people are arguing that you should remake episodes 7, 8, and 9, and I would probably agree with them.
As far as I'm concerned, start from the prequels and do a remake. Marvel it, lock in some actors and actresses for huge, lengthy contracts, and just get it done. And, expand on it, make it more interesting, answer a lot more questions, definitely. But, when Lucas is gone and, I don't know, Hamill's gone, or whoever else, fresh young faces, it'll be a great experience, I think. And I'd be optimistic. Just like I'd be very optimistic about a remake for this, even if it's 10 years out. Gundam definitely deserves it. And with its place in anime, I think a reboot and a refresh would definitely attract more fans, breathe life into it, because it's still going strong now. At least we might be in the golden age of Gundam with how great the recent series have been, and even OVAs like this that are kind of side stories. It's just a great time to be a Gundam fan, and this was such a great experience. I look forward to nothing but more great things from Sunrise.
Yeah, and if you think about it, Isaac, I think we just celebrated the 40th anniversary in 2019. The 50th anniversary would be a great time to remake the show. 2029. It's not that far away, people. We're already in 2023.
Wow.
They did the origin. They did this. You could argue that both of them were really testing the waters, right? Like, because if this came out and it failed and no one liked it, then maybe they would be like, maybe people don't want to see that show anymore. But this has like really high reviews wherever you check. It's all like 4.8 and above. That's really good out of 5.
Just start it now. Just start the pre-production now. Build the hype train.
Yeah, and if they're going to do this, they're going to put all their effort into it because, it's not every day that you remake a franchise like this. Is an important thing, right?
It's going to be like a Unicorn where it takes like a decade to tell the story.
Very well could be. I mean, we've talked about this before. If you were to remake this, look, your last time you did this started a franchise that's lasted almost 50 years at this point. If you're going to remake it, you're going to make sure it lasts another 50 years, right?
It's like Hellsing, where they needed 6 years to tell 6 episodes. Or Berserk, yeah. Right? Where it's been like 3 years and they've done like 5 episodes.
Yeah. So I'll finish my thought on the remake, Isaac, by just saying, look, I am one of the people that does want a remake just to make sure the franchise stays accessible. Not that I think it's inaccessible, but I think other people do, and it's not really my opinion that counts. But even if I didn't want a remake, I would still tell you that eventually Bandai will remake the show, just because it makes money, and they have to. Yeah. They have to ensure that they need to continue to make money. I think the answer is they will remake it, not because of what anyone thinks, but because of the returns that they will eventually guarantee themselves.
You know what? This was so great. I wish I could buy it. But I would support it that way, or I don't know. I'd get merch. I get Southern Cross merch or Makuve merch or something.
You get the little Makuve floof and wear that as we live stream.
Start wearing that to work and walking around town. It's like, are you in the military? It's like, nah, not the United States military. I'm with Xeon.
Isaac, how many Haros would you give this film?
Oh, I'd give this 6 out of 5 Haros.
Wow, nice. I love it.
If you're a Gundam fan, if you're an anime fan, a mecha fan, watch this series. And if you haven't seen the original series or you barely remember it, that's okay, because this almost feels like a self-contained movie in itself. You don't need to know a lot about the lore or anything like that. It's just people in a war, and this is what's happening on an island. Brian, how many Haros do you give Cucuruz Doan's Island?
I think I'm going to give it 9.5 out of 10 Haros. I think it was great to see all of our old friends again on the white base. They were all in top form. I loved the cinematic feel of the movie. That was a great change of pace. It had room to breathe, which I think a lot of shows don't do these days. And it was gorgeous to watch. I liked the story. It was self-contained. It left me, wanting a remake, but it also left me satisfied that we were able to get this at all, Isaac. I mean, I think it's frankly a little bit amazing that we got this. So I love it, highly recommend it, especially if you've seen the original Mobile Suit Gundam. But to your point, you don't need to know that much about Gundam. I mean, maybe it would help to see like some episodes of the original, or maybe even like the first compilation movie. And if you just don't worry too much about the canon or the sequence of events, it's like you said, it's a perfect side story. It doesn't really affect the whole story at the end of the day, but it's a nice little romp. So highly recommended. You should all go watch it.
Yeah, what makes it so accessible too is they don't go into anything new type. They don't discuss how the Gundam's like a prototype and it's so great and all that. You're just launched into the setting and it's done so well.
Yeah, it's a very understandable story, right? Kids are in trouble. Let's save the kids.
Yeah, we don't go back and forth between, the Xeon High Command. I mean, we see Makuve, but we're not going to the zombies on Side 3, and we're not talking about, like, space fascism and all that stuff. It's so self-contained, so not low level, but intimate, that it's very accessible, and you'd be foolish not to see this series or movie. I'm sorry.
Yeah, those other things that you said they're there if you want them, but they're not like necessary to the story. So if you have knowledge of Gundam, I think you'll have a good time and find lots of little things. Like, for example, the little certificate in Bright's office on the Might base that's signed by General Revel on his wall. Did you notice that? I thought that was neat.
I missed that. Well, like a certificate. Wait, he did a class with General Revel?
I don't know. Maybe it was like his HR training class. Signed off by General Revel. It could be his rank certificate or something. I don't know.
Brian, it was the Bright Noa Academy for Gentlemanly Officers.
There you go. He got his charter to start the school.
I guarantee you, Bask Alm does not have that certificate signed on his wall.
That one's signed by Gopp.
Yeah, or no, give Gopp more credit. I don't think Gopp would sign one for Bask Alm. Jamatov, yeah, or Colony, Admiral Colony.
Yeah, that's true. Colony, that guy.
Colony, sorry.
Yeah, Colony.
Because he's a colon. Yeah.
We need a colon. The Federation needs a colonoscopy.
There you go.
All right, listeners, let us know your thoughts on the film, your characters, mecha, anything you want to talk about. Let us know.
Did you see the original Doan's Island? What do you think compared to this one? Is this canon? Is this a glorified side story? What was your favorite part of it?
What did you think about the goat milking? Do you think you could do it now that you got those detailed instructions? I mean, look, it's a good movie and it gives life advice, Isaac.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. You never know when you might have to milk a goat,
Yeah. You'll just be sitting there. The world's gone to, but then you got yourself a goat and you're like, well, at least I saw Cucuruz Doan milk Blanca in that Mobile Suit Gundam movie.
Wait, the goat had a name? It was Blanca?
Yeah, Blanca.
Oh, wow. I must have missed that. I was probably rolling my eyes whenever they were showing the kids and stuff on the island. I was like, oh, God, just launch the nukes.
Where are the nukes?
Just napalm the island. Oh, there's a bunch of human debris on the island.
Isaac would name his nukes like children. Oh, that's Kika. That's Cats.
That's little Billy. I guess kind of like children, right? You always have to watch them.
That's true. They require a lot of maintenance, a lot of time.
Yeah, exactly. Money. You don't want some guy to hijack and sabotage your whole plan for the news. This is great recording on a Sunday morning, Brian, because it's why go to church when you can record a Gundam podcast, right, Brian?
Yeah, this is our first morning recording, listeners. So if Isaac seems peppier, it's because he, just woke up, did his little workout, and then he came to get some Gundam podcast time.
Exactly. Yeah. Why go to church when you can go to Gundam, Brian? Jesus isn't real, but Gundam will always be real.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Alrighty, everyone, take us away, Isaac.
All right, listeners, before you go to sleep tonight, stand next to your bed, get on your knees, put your hands together, look up at the ceiling, and hail the Southern Cross Squadron.
The Southern Cross.
I'll re-add that in. And hail the Southern Cross Squadron of Zeon.
Good morning, everybody.